Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And today we've seen Rye Lane, which was on a long list of movies that I said to you saying we could go see any of these today. I don't really care whether we see any of them or don't. And you picked this one, which was interesting to me. British rom-com set in London, in and amongst kind of black culture, to describe it as black film. You, about 20 or 25 minutes in, leant over to me and said, should we go and see if something else is on? And I said, I'm all right with this. And there are three reasons I said that. One is that I was all right with it.
You were ornery and wanted to punish me.
Yes. That's the second reason. The first is that I was all right with it. I wanted to see how it would go. I mean, it's a genre piece. You kind of know how the things are going to fall, but I want to see how it would play out. Second was, yes, I wanted to punish you. I thought it's great that you picked this, and now I get to, I with glee, occasionally, throughout the rest of the film, I would, remember that you were having a terrible time and this must be torture for you. And I would, smile to myself. It was wonderful. And the third reason is that Cocaine Bear was on at 5, and I was quite keen to miss it.
Wow.
So, and if we'd have left, we'd have had to see it.
You might like Cocaine Bear. How do you know?
I might like Cocaine Bear, but it seems like very
I mean, it's not as if...
It seems very Snakes on a Plane, sort of.
Sure.
Everyone's into the big joke movie. Anyway,
I was having a terrible time, and so to begin with, the reason why I wanted to see it is because it's British, because it's a romantic comedy, done with a black cast, because it has a London location, and actually I can't remember seeing another black British romantic comedy, right? So so I wanted to see it basically, But within the first 10 minutes, I just thought, this is awful. I didn't like the male lead in particular.
I thought he was weak early on.
I thought he was completely charmless and uncharismatic.
And he starts off with this crying on the toilet, and that's essentially the meet cute. And I thought he was very bad at it.
Yeah.
It doesn't endear you to him right away.
No. I hated the look of it. I didn't understand those huge wide angles that begin to look almost fish-eyed, because they curve so much on the edges, right? With the characters lost in the middle of it, right? I mean, this is a romantic comedy. You want to see kind of people's faces, and I just didn't understand that aesthetic for this genre of film, because the thing about a romantic comedy is you know exactly what's going to happen, right? And you know exactly how it's going to end. So the whole process is in kind of, showing the charisma, the jokes, kind of trying to make every moment as entertaining and as charming as possible. This, to me, just absolutely failed. And I don't know if it's just me, that, the film is not speaking to my sensibility. But aside from the film maybe not speaking to my sensibility, I thought so many of the choices were wrong for this type of film. Yeah. And primarily the look. And sometimes you get things like camera movement, or you didn't understand why it was doing what the film was doing. And I thought, so for example, when they take that whole bike ride across London, right, that should be a wonderful, romantic, glamorous moment. You just have a huge close-up of the two protagonists, right? So you have these wide shots everywhere else, and now you move into a close-up when they're kind of ostensibly going through the city. I thought it was absurd. It's like, what's the film? Roman Holiday. It's like doing Roman Holiday, and they're on their bike and not showing you Rome. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't get it.
Yeah. I have some sense of what you mean. There are things about the film that I wish were funnier, mainly. Although it did make me laugh quite a few times.
Not that many. You laughed a few, you chuckled a few times.
Yeah, so no, I wasn't rolling around on the floor. It's not that kind of comedy. But I found it fairly charming, and I was with the characters, and it did make me giggle. And there were jokes that worked as they were meant to, right? The thing about the fisheye, close to fisheye, the wide angle stuff, is very noticeable. And I noticed it too. And I have some sense of what you mean, but I kind of liked the idea that it was giving you... What it does is it simultaneously makes your field of view extremely wide. That's what it does. But everything recedes into the background very quickly as well. It accentuates depth into the frame. And so you get this sense of a world which is very wide and it's kind of alive, but it's never, that's never the focus. It's still the background to them. They're centered in it still. They're still the focus of it. I did kind of like...
I didn't like it. I mean, obviously they were the center of it. What are you going to do? Put them on the sides? but there's all this empty space on both sides of them. And I thought, sure, if you want to do a film about alienation, that would be a great choice. But actually, to do a romantic comedy and film, the central couple in the midst of all this curved,
it puts them together
space.
in the world. They're together. I like, and also it's not the only shot the film does. It comes back to it.
Well,
there's a lot of variety.
Dominant aesthetic.
There's a lot of variety though in what it's doing. And one actually, I was thinking, I do like how this is. It wants to find interesting angles. It wants to shoot low, and it wants to shoot high, and it wants to shoot planimetric. And when it was doing that, or shoot, with the characters on each side of the frame with a symmetrical thing, and it was jumping around doing all these different things that were always kind of interesting. Early on, when they're at the gallery, you get these extreme close-ups of the character, the artist whose show they're at. Kind of leaning right into the frame, super, super close, and then kind of moving out of it in a funny way. It's used. I liked it. It had energy. The one type of shot in the film that I didn't like, which is used a couple of times, is a shot that places... It'll be a single shot on a character, and it'll be a cutting between them in conversation. But it'll place the character on the left of frame, looking left. So the empty space is behind them on the right. And then when it cuts back, the character is on the right of frame, looking right. And it's not natural, and I couldn't see the purpose to it. And it did just... It's a shot that made me less pleased with all the other shots that the film had, because it was like this one has failed, and it has no real purpose. And are you just doing this because you're looking for a way to shoot something differently?
Yes. Well, my thing is, they're trying to find a way to be conceptually interesting, right? The shots of the peeing, the shots of the guy multiplied in the cinema, they're trying to be inventive, in quotation marks, but actually kind of they're doing it in ways that don't serve the story, that don't enhance the characterization, that don't tell the don't set up the jokes better, doesn't create any visual jokes. I mean, and particularly in a romantic comedy, you have to have kind of the charm of the give and take between the characters. None of the visual choices supported that. And I found it like really annoying after a certain point. All of these, because I also thought it's what I most hate about British cinema, actually, because the whole film to me felt theatrical, stagey. It's just people talking and talking and talking, and then in the middle of it, you have something that's meant to be a set piece, a new location, or like a change of scenery in a play, right? That's kind of, the whole beginning of the film is exactly like that, right? And then ways of being conceptually interesting. So like, on a stage, you'd have like some light projection or, something to dazzle, right? But actually, I think film doesn't work that way, right? And so, these conceptually interesting things here are detracting, from the story and from the genre and from what people find kind of, beautiful and appealing and entertaining and glamorous. I mean, I love romantic comedies. I thought this one was crap.
I must say I found it much more natural than I expected to, because I did come to it, especially early on in those first few minutes, feeling the kind of intensity of the visual choices and feeling that theatrical nature that you describe. But after, it took a little while. It took some 20 minutes or so. And maybe it was because you had expressed a desire to leave that I was like, I'm going to enjoy this more now. But I did start to get into the vibe of it. And also that's around the point in the film when they have met, and now they're on so the film is structured as basically a single day. It has a little bit of like a before sunrise sort of thing. They meet and they spend the day together, and they talk about their histories and the breakups that they're getting over, and and start to kindle a friendship and a possible romance. And once they start just wandering around chatting, I felt very kind of comfortable and at home with the characters and with the way it was telling its story. It felt quite natural to me, and I enjoyed that.
I felt the opposite. I thought, this is going nowhere. The talk isn't interesting. I also thought of the Sunsets films, and I thought it was like poles apart, because this tried to dazzle you with like stupid shots, right? Kind of. The other one seemed very naturalist, actually, but it had all the glamour, and the emotion and the realness. This actually felt like it was a series of attitudes, really. I don't think there was anything real in the film at all. It isn't real about the attitudes to art. It isn't real about the attitudes to love. It isn't even real about, the attitudes to family, right? I kind of, I thought it was all like a kind of a simulacra of something that the director wanted to be, and I found it irritating.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's an extent to which you feel like how real are these characters, or how, I mean, they're broader in some respects, and some things are going to be broader, and certainly the characters around them are fairly broad. You've got like the ex-girlfriend who's kind of up herself and kind of a bitch, and then the guy that she cheated on him with, who's his old mate from school, who is just like a dumb as a bag of hammers, and that's his whole thing, and and he doesn't get anything at any point, and I found him kind of funny, but it's extremely broad. So I kind of like I get those. They're real kind of archetypes.
The real stereotypes.
But the two main characters, part of me is thinking how real are these guys? These guys have to be more real. They have to be people I can buy into more. And they are. They're certainly not as broad as the rest. And I guess particularly with the girl character, the girl of the pair, you kind of know this thing about how she broke up with her boyfriend. You know that's going to turn out to be a lie. And this is going to be a thing that humanises her more deeply, that she lied, to save her ego.
The scenes, though, when they go into the ex's flat, are so badly directed and so charmless. I mean, that is meant to be like some pratfall, charming screwball thing, and it's just so badly handled, and it looks so terrible. And again, it's interesting because I thought the artist was actually like 100 times more charismatic than the lead, right? Like, but also just kind of, given nothing to do. I mean, that's not a person, and it's not a commentary on art, and it's not funny, and it's not dangerous, and like, I just thought it was terrible.
No, that could have been a lot better and a lot funnier. Of the main pair, it's still, by the end of the film, I basically don't believe the guy. I don't believe who he is. I don't believe that someone this kind of weak and unable to stand up for himself and all that kind of thing was in a relationship with this girl for 6 years, for one thing.
Well,
who's so much stronger.
I think the whole project of this romantic comedy, was twofold. One, to make it black, so, about black British culture and the locations and so on. And actually, I kind of liked, I certainly loved the attempt at doing that. Yeah. And I even liked some of that.
And we should say that the writer and director and people behind it, they're not like white people making a black movie. This is a black British movie from head to toe, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that, but I assume
they are,
yeah. So that's, one of the projects of the film is to do that. The other project is to change the gender thing, right? So it's the man who's like weak and crying, and she discovers him in the bathroom crying, right? And at the end, she's the one who makes the call and, comes on the boat, and he goes running to her.
Yeah, she makes the grand gesture.
So I think there's a bit of a gender switch into the conventions of it. So I think it is part of the film's project. It's just not handled very well.
Because actually, the thing about the gender roles, the typicality of the gender roles that I noticed was the film had that evocation of the manic pixie dream girl, that in exactly the right way. Like, she is the girl who comes into his life and lifts him up and shows him that there's more, and gets him to break into a house and ride a motorbike and all.
Well, there is that.
So that's like down the line. That's the way it goes. But you're right. But that's interesting that there is also a flip in it.
Though I suppose in films like in Screwballs, like Bringing a Baby, it is Cary Grant also who's passive. He's the scholar.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking that.
She's
as well.
the one. Yeah, so
it is the women in those films who are the strong ones, the opinionated ones.
Yeah,
and
so
men are
So maybe that's more a convention than I'm giving it credit for.
Yeah.
But anyway, but you could see that it was that is what the film is doing. Yeah, that she's the strong, dynamic character, and also, the actress playing her is much more appealing and charismatic than the male lead, right?
That's a big issue.
Which is a problem because, I think the thing about romantic comedies is it has to be about the couple. So, you have Kate Hudson and you have Matthew McConaughey, or you have Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant. Yeah, it's kind of, or, you have Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. Yeah, you can't have one of the couple being so much weaker than the other one, or it doesn't work. And I think this is an instance of it, because the guy is just so much weaker than the woman. So anyway,
I don't think it's a huge piece of shit, and it did things for me, but it's not a great film by any means.
I thought it was terrible.
It's the director's debut feature, Rain Allen Miller, her name is, and you know, better things could come. She's young, but this isn't terrific.
No, and actually, it's like, you know.
I tell you something I do like about it. Actually, is there's a lightness and kind of a campiness to quite a lot of it that I really enjoyed. I mean, actually, early on, there's a campiness to the main character, to the boy, that I didn't expect.
Crying and with the pink shoes.
Right. Well, I don't mean that in kind of a disparaging way, but he has a kind of like a gentleness to him, I guess. Maybe
I like the gentleness, you know, but I just don't like the way that it's done, really.
Yeah.
Because again, you could have done something else with the gentleness and the strength, or you know, kind of somebody like Bob Hope made a whole career of being just a coward. You know, you could have had jokes about when the artist confronts him in the loft. So I just thought he had very little presence in the film. He lacked charisma, but then also I thought he lacked skill. Yeah,
he does.
So I thought that was a whole problem. You know, and I mean, I don't want to crap over young people trying to do interesting things. It's true, you know, kind of everything might change. But I think on the evidence that we see here, I think this is a film that's directed with little feel for the medium and little skill.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. But it wasn't just that. It was in. You know, there's that shot where they're walking through the mall that's closed, or like shopping arcade that's closed, and all the shutters are down, but the shutters are all painted in these pastel colours, pinks and purples and greens and stuff. And they don't need to be, but there's something very nice and pleasant about it. Just this very mildly idealised thing that reflects kind of their budding relationship. I really liked the character Mona, was the name, the drag. Well, I don't know, drag or queer sort of.
No, I liked him too.
Who ran the club, you know, who was his real injection of
energy that the film lacked.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, that's the.
But there's something. I suppose there's something like really non-judgmental about all that. Like if you think about rom-coms, even kind of comparable rom-coms, like British rom-coms from like the 90s, like the Richard Curtis types, there will be people in those who, on the basis of being gay or trans or something like that, will be the butt of a joke, and there's nothing like that here.
Actually, you know, that's not true about the Richard Curtis ones. I mean, you know, I remember watching things like Four Weddings and a Funeral, and of course being completely moved by the gay relationships in those films because they were unheard of. You know, they were about love. I mean, the poem in the funeral of you know, Four Weddings, it was just tears, really. So
well, I don't mean just Richard Curtis, but I think there's definitely an evolution in comic cinema in general.
In general, I agree.
So maybe it's unfair to pick on him specifically.
Yeah, but. So, you know.
But that's very nice, right? It's basically there's an openness and egalitarianism to whoever you are, you get to have your place and find your laughs.
I like that in the film as well, you know. I mean, actually, you know, if it was all just intentions, you know, I would love it. It's got 100% my support. You know, I want to see more films like this, and I love the attitudes and so on. I just, you know, I mean, it was my choice to go.
Yeah.
And you know, it's my disappointment, basically. You know, I wish I could have liked it. You know, but I just didn't. I thought it was like terrible.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. There we go.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Our social media is on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.